Arizona, but connecting from London. Wow, amazing. Hi, welcome, Brazil. Welcome, everyone. Please, for those who just joined, welcome again, Brazil. But introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, and what are you expecting to get from the session. Okay, so I'm going to start in just 30 seconds or so. Oh, no, actually, it's already past the 2 minutes. So I'm going to start with a quick introduction from Women for Future, and then I will pass it on to Sara, who is our next presenter. So for those who already hear the speech, please bear with me. So this is the first session of second session of Women for Future for day 2. And the team behind this amazing project is me, myself, Abril Chimal, and I'm from Mexico. I'm also a foresight practitioner and a designer. And my colleague, Thais, that she will be joining us later. She is from Brazil. She is also a foresight practitioner, storyteller, and she focuses on, she's a gender specialist. And well, this session with Sara is part of a larger event called Women for Future. And this event emerged from our desire to create safe spaces to exchange, promote, and celebrate the work of women in futures and foresight. So we want to showcase the diversity of approaches that women are taking in their working field and reflect on how women's identity inform their practice and find new ways of articulating feminist principles and gender issues in foresight and future. We have an amazing lineup of speakers, panelists, and facilitators. So we encourage you to have a look in Luma. You should have received a link to our calendar so you can register for the other sessions that we will have within the next few hours until tomorrow. And also, just by saying that you have been sent a code of conduct, and this is meant to be a safe and enjoyable space. And we have zero tolerance to any form of harassment and discrimination. I will share that code of conduct in a moment as well. And in the meantime, I give the floor to Sara so she can introduce herself and start her amazing session. Over to you.
Thank you, April. Hello, beautiful humans. Thank you so much for joining me today. So I'm going to share with you a Miro link, and we're going to jump right in. Today, we're going to be talking about future literacies in the Arabic language. And hopefully it's going to be a fun, interesting, and reflective space for all of us to collaborate in. So I'm going to try to share the link now. So just to give you a bit of a heads up, I'm a little bit nervous, and because I'm nervous, I decided to do what everyone does, is make my life more complicated by trying to present on Miro for the first time in this format. So if there are any technical difficulties or, if that doesn't go into plan, it's going to be okay. It's, all part of the process. So I'm going to start by, I don't know if I need to share my screen when I'm doing this, because there's the share feature on Miro, but maybe it's better so that if anyone doesn't have Miro, it's okay. If you have a pen and paper next to you, I encourage you to put it, because I really want this session to be one where we're interacting with each other. If you feel comfortable, please turn on your camera. I would love to see, some smiling faces and some friendly ones, because really the session is, hello, yay, okay. Yes, okay, like great start. Because really the session is going to be a conversation between the two of us. I won't spoil too much. Let's just get started. Okay. I forgot how to share. Let's see. All right, share screen. All right. Share. Okay. So, we've kind of already covered this part. This session is entitled Khayal, and it's about creating spaces for future's imagination. I'd like to start by thanking Abril and Thais for creating this. Oh, okay. Oh, we're starting off to great technical difficulties. I'd like to thank Abril and Thais for creating this event and creating the safe space for us to talk and have a conversation. I would like to, today in Lebanon, it's Mother's Day. I don't know if that's the case internationally. So anyone's a mom here or, if your mom or anyone, happy Mother's Day to all of you. And also Ramadan Kareem to those who are fasting. I hope it's a blessed month to all of us. Okay, so and another thank you for joining me again in this crazy time. Okay, done with the thank yous. I promise we're gonna get started. So it's 11:37 right now. I heard that it's really late in other places in the world. It's really early in some places in the world. So to kind of get the energy started, I kind of want to do a quick check-in to see how everyone's feeling and to also, adjust my level. Maybe you want something a little bit more calm. Maybe, I need to pump it up a little bit more. So I'll give us 2 minutes. If there's a feature on Miro where you can add sticky emojis, which I just enabled, and you can just add, your panda to it to see what's happening. So also need to see which panda I am. I think I'm this one. Also, if anyone is not commonly used to Miro, it's okay. We're going to have a few activities to get us started and get us used to how to use Miro before we get and dive into the really deep stuff. Oh, okay. Also, if I'm looking away, I'm checking the clock because I tend to run over sometimes and I kind of don't want to do that. So I'm paying attention to you guys. I'm just trying to focus. Okay, we have a few ones. We have a few threes, myself included. A lot of sevens. Ooh, okay, we need to change the level a little bit. Okay. And a few eights. Okay. All right. So thank you for sharing how you're feeling with me. Okay. Thank you for sharing how you feel with me. We'll move on to the next step where okay, let's try to unhide some of these. Where I think Abril already covered this, but I would love for us to again take a few minutes if this wants to open. I'll open it in a bit. Take a few minutes and fill out what I'm calling is our mountain of expectation. So we all come into this session, maybe the title intrigued you, maybe maybe you felt like Arabic or literacy, maybe you're really good friends who are here to support. I'm not sure why you're here, but I would love if to find out, and so that we're all aligned, so that by the end of this session, we see if we've met some of those expectations, and so that while I'm conducting this session, I can also cover some of these topics, because as I said, it's a conversation, so it'll be a little bit, it'll flow. So I'll also give maybe 2 minutes and see how it goes. And in the meantime, I'll try to figure out what's happening with the other screens. So I'm reading, there's a lot of learning from others' experiences, curious about the name, learning about the topic, hearing more about the topic, hearing about the journey and the experience and the exploring of futures, gathering perspective and insight, supporting a close friend. Perfect. Okay, so I think that we've kind of also prepped a little bit as well for this, and I kind of put my expectations of this session as well. And I'm really, hoping that we can have it's a space for learning, and everyone's here also with the expectation of learning. That's amazing. To have, again, conversations. So at any point, you're encouraged to, put a sticky note on the presentations. It's interactive, or to open up your mic and start talking if it's something you're really passionate about, or you have anything you want to. Okay. I want you guys to hopefully enjoy, and I want us to go on a journey of reflection together. So now that we have this mountain out of the way, what is this? What is the structure of this session going to look like? First, I'm going to give a quick introduction about the project. However, the aim of the session today is not really to go into the end product or into, too much into the journey, but rather to go into the lessons and experiences and key insights that I really want to share, and hopefully, hear your opinions about them. So one of the first things, the first section will be about conversations about futures. And then we're going to be talking about the power of language. And these two are going to be interconnected, and you'll see shortly how. And then we're going to have another section, which is going to take, a big part of our time together, which is spaces of imagination. The titles are a bit flu, and I'll explain, not flu, but like broad, but I'll explain why that is in a bit. So let's start with a quick introduction to the project. The project is named Khayal. Khayal is the Arabic word for imagination, but it means so much more. It also means specter, it means shadow, and I was inspired by it because a lot of the times we don't notice some things that are happening within our field, and they are in the shadows. And there are some ghosts that tend to haunt us, whether we know or not, and they cause tension between us. And again, imagination. That is something that I'm very much fascinated in within the world of futures. This project started as my final major project, but it sort of turned into an obsession. It was part of my final major project at UAL as part of my service design course. And I'm going to start with the end and then go back into the beginning. As all stories go, it's crazy. It's a little bit wonky, but what is time? Well, we'll talk about that at some point as well. The big, bold vision for this project moving forward is hopefully to create a hub where Arabic resources are present and easily accessible for teachers, for students, or for anyone really interested in futures. Because honestly, when I was trying and working on this project, it was really hard to find any resources that were in Arabic, or any I mean, there were some, but maybe they were too, geared towards corporate, geared towards, visioning and, getting companies to certain places, or, if they were a little bit more, non-normative, I think that's the word when we say they weren't, as easily accessible or in the language. So that's the big, bold vision. However, a single human being cannot really do that, and not in the span of 6, 7, 8 months. So I collaborated with my former company, which is called Kalima, and they specialize in edtech. And together, we're currently working on, and this continuous project, we're currently working on creating a toolkit to support teachers in the MENA region to kind of introduce the concepts of futures within a wider course, which is related to social emotional learning. And the tool, this is, the user journey. The toolkit includes workshop series to kind of facilitate the process for the teachers. It includes resources and guide materials. It includes a framework, and this is the Khayal framework. We can talk about these a little bit more in detail maybe at the end. I don't want to spend too much time going into too much. But so all of these are actually created and crafted based on a more than human wisdom. They're based on Utopia as method, and they're based on Middle Eastern traditions. So now that you have an overall view, we're going to get started with our first activity. And thus the big reveal. Let's again hope it reveals nicely. So all of these boards, I encourage you to take a single board, and you'll be working in a horizontal in this manner. You'll be working, but let's just start with the first board. So I encourage you to take a board and to just put your name somewhere, and I'll give you the instructions in a few. I just want everyone to spread out. And again, if you're not comfortable with Miro, please take a pen, paper, and join me. How's the speed so far? Am I going too fast or?
There is a question in the chat, Sara, that if it's okay if someone doesn't speak in Arabic.
Of course. We're going to be, talking about language in general. I will be using Arabic as as a reference or as a prompt for my own reflections, but I really encourage you, and this is why I really wanted a conversation, to reflect about it within your own language. And I will provide explanations for anything I say in Arabic as well. Okay, so great, I see people settling in. Okay. So hopefully we've settled, and I think I'm going to stop presenting so that you're not pulled into my view. All right, I'm going to set the clock. Just to, again, give you a heads up, you're going to hear a lot. I'm going to set the clock, but it's because we have a lot to go through, and I really want to make sure we do. Okay. So you have 1 minute. I want you to take your pen tool, which is located here. I think I'm still sharing my screen. And just to start doodling for the next minute or so without thinking of anything, just to get your hands used to the pen tool. We're going to be using it a lot, or to your pencil if you're using your pencil. And yeah, just go crazy. Enjoy. Okay, the minute is up. Now I want you to reveal the first card. And basically, what I'm going to ask you to do is to look at your doodles and see if it's possible to create a bird out of them. Now, it might sound a little bit not feasible, but I assure you, no matter what the doodle is, if you add a pair of eyes, a beak, a pair of legs, and a tail to it, you will most likely end up with a bird. I mean, 90% of the time that happens. If it doesn't, it's fine. So I'm going to give you another 30 seconds or a minute just to see how many beautiful birds you're going to be creating. Okay, time's up. Now that we're done, before I talk and reveal why we did this activity, I kind of just want to see your reflections on it. Did you notice anything? What was it like? And you'll notice at the beginning, after each activity, there's going to be like a reflection section here where I encourage you to put to put your sticky notes, to put your ideas. If you want to say something, now's the time. I'm going to give this maybe 3 minutes because it was a really short activity, or maybe even less. But yeah, and if anyone wants to unmute, please go for it. I'm going to look at some of the wonderful birds. Okay, so some of the reflections are, I absolutely did not create a bird. It's to be expected. Easier and harder to do than I thought. Tricky to find the pen tool. My bird looks like a fish. I've had that happen as well. The concept was interesting. Despite perhaps the randomness of the doodle, it may have been possible to have a unified illustration. Okay, so
You're a great facilitator because you have raised the concentration level to such a degree that as I was drawing, I have some background in occult and divination and several other traditions. There was serious intent. I mean, I thought it didn't make sense, but because of terrible art background, I could turn it into a fish or a bird but yeah, I mean, it works. So.
incredible. That right there, that comment is exactly why we start this session the way we do with the Squigglebird activity. The Squigglebird activity is actually inspired by gamestorming.com, and I will try to get the link, or I'll try to get the link for you guys. It's an incredible site. Thank you. And the reason why we start with this is to break away from the concept of I am not a good artist, or drawing, really, that's not for me, or you know I'm telling you why we're doing this. And again, it's we have preconceived notions in our heads that that's the designer, that's the job of the designer. In any session or art participation, we kind of come in with reservations. We come in with preconceived notions about who we are. And this is a really nice exercise to, first of all, directly get results of creating beautiful, interesting, different birds, and emphasis on beautiful, different, interesting birds. There is no right way or wrong way for a bird to be, just like there is no right way or wrong way for futures to be, just like there's no right or wrong answer. So I really want us to come in with this idea of it all goes. There's no proper way of talking. There's no proper way of drawing. We're going to be drawing a lot here. So that's why I also want you to not feel shy about it. As long as we're, getting the concept across, that's all that matters. Stick figures, sticky notes, whatever it is. Hopefully we're feeling impassioned and empowered, and we drew a little. We're going to directly jump into our next activity. Which is slightly the main event, I would say, because we're going to finally start talking about some futures here. Okay, so again, pick a board, and I will wait till everyone's settled in. While you're picking your board, also settle into a nice position. And trust me a little, because, there's just gonna be maybe a little bit of closing your eyes and imagining things, maybe, or, viewing some things. Let's see. All right. Okay, so I invite you to move the first card, card number 1. And after you do, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes and listen to my instructions. The instructions are, written as well for anyone who, prefers to read them, but I'm going to be saying them. And I'm going to start the timer now. And again, we have 1 minute. With your eyes closed, I want you to tell me, what do you see when I say the word future? Do not overthink it. What is the first image that crosses your mind? Do you see it clearly? Now that you see it, do you mind opening your eyes and drawing it for me on this blank piece of paper? And again, if you're more comfortable writing, please go ahead. If you're more comfortable, writing on your own notebook, go ahead. But I would love for you to participate in this. Now, for anyone who's almost done, I just have a quick question for you. When you were imagining or seeing this future, was it in a specific time? And was it in a few days? Was it in a year? Was it in 20 years? Was it on a date that is very specific? If you have that in mind, kindly write it down on the, on the line on the piece of paper if you feel comfortable doing so.
So you mean, sorry, Sarah, you mean we write down the date if it has a specific moment in time?
If it has if it has a specific moment, if it's in 20 years, you can write 20 years. If it's the date 2050, you can write that down.
Thank you. For me, there was no date. It's just like a vision of something that I hope probably, but there was no date. Funny, let's see.
That's nice. Does not. Okay. That took maybe more than a minute. I'm gonna be more strict in the next one, although the next one is actually more tricky. So I want you to move the second card, and then I want you to close your eyes again. And this time, you're going to help me out. So I want you to think of the word future in your own language. I want you to say that word out loud. In my language, future is al-mustaqbal. So I want you to say the future in your own language. Say it out loud. Scream it if you want to.
Gelecek.
Gelecek.
I hear Turkish, I hear Spanish. Incredible. As you were listening to yourself, as you heard those words out loud, what image came to your mind? Now I want you, again, with 1 minute, to draw that image. Doesn't have to be perfect. Now, if English is your first language, you don't have to participate in this one. And if you ended up having the same image that you had for the previous future, you can just put the same. Your minute starts now. Okay, for anyone who is ready, if again, the same question, if you have a time or a date or a period that appeared to your mind in this future, please write it down. And if you didn't, again, no need. Okay, I think maybe we're ready to visit our final future. And moving the third card, and again, closing your eyes. What image or vision comes to mind when I say the future of your country in 2050? Again, is this image different than the one before and the one before? Or is it completely different? If it is, I invite you to draw it so that we can see it. And at the risk of sounding redundant, I will also ask about if you know, by any chance have a certain year or a certain time period or a certain date that came to mind. Actually, that doesn't work here because I actually said the year, which is 2050. So ignore that mistake. Okay, hopefully hopefully we're all wrapping up. Before I start and explain some of, the reason behind all of this, again, I have prepared a board of reflection, and I would love for us to take a few minutes, maybe 3 minutes, for you to put down some of the things that you've noticed, some of the things that might have stuck with you, some of the feelings you might have had, or the no feelings that you might have had, anything really. And again, if anyone wants to unmute themselves, please go ahead. And I would love to hear what you're thinking.
I actually wanted to share out loud. But something funny that happened is that when I was thinking about the future in English, I thought about the planet. But then when I was thinking about the future in my country, there was people. I thought about the people, and it made me think that how much it's about context probably, and like how I can imagine those people. When I think in English, it's kind of like a global thing, so I don't imagine the people. I don't know if it makes sense or if other people had the same. I was trying to see if other people like had similar things. I saw in the first board there was also kind of like the same, like a tree in the first one, then people in the second one. And it's funny as well when I put it a year, because that they didn't have a year, but when I put it a year at the third one, suddenly the people that I saw connect, it was like instead of a vision, it was suddenly, like what I think it would happen, which is actually not good, So yeah, I think it's funny how it changed with just the phrasing itself.
Ipek, I think you have your hand up.
I think I share the same thing. That's why I raise my hands. So whenever I was thinking in English, I was more thinking about something. The words that I put down was more like far distance kind of words. So it was like something more intangible kind of things. And then whenever I thought about in my own language, it was more personal. I thought about my own, like it was more personal. It was my own future. And I thought about me in 20 years, in 15, 20 years. But whenever I thought about it in English, it was not personal. It wasn't nothing about me.
Thank you. Michelle, your hand up.
For me, whenever you asked about the future and the time frame, it was always now. It didn't matter what you gave me. And then when you asked for a country, I couldn't, in 2050, I don't think I will have a country. So to me, I could only connect to like something like a natural landscape. And I just assumed I was part of nature. So that's where the people were. People were plants. It was a strange realization.
Thank you for sharing that. Beshir, am I saying the name correctly?
Yes. Back in 99, we had a terrible earthquake in Turkey, and the whole building code and enforcement laws and everything changed, but it wasn't really enforced, and nobody took it seriously. So what I thought of as 2050 is actually a horizon, the horizon of a city that's been properly built, modern, and like really compliant and safe and clean. So, or also it could be because of the election period in Turkey. So, a lot of bombardment. So it could be the propaganda talking.
Thank you for sharing that. Wow, those are some pretty amazing reflections, and I'll try to read a little bit and then I'll move on. Let me see. I was struck that for me the future was always now. The first prompt equal futures equal sky. The second prompt equal future in the sky. I think more people are still writing, so I'll give it one more minute and I'll, talk a little bit more. But I'm really fascinated. I actually would love to, take a look at everyone's, and I encourage you guys also to take a look at everyone's different futures. That's going to come up in the conversation. So please look at them. See if anyone, if anyone's future is resembling yours or if they're all extremely different. Right. Okay. I'm going to start talking again, but I encourage you to, keep putting your reflections. Also, again, as I mentioned, the presentation is on Miro for everyone to kind of start putting in their reflections as it's going, and, to flag me down if there's anything really interesting that we would like to talk about. So let's just reveal some stuff here. So if you didn't notice, this activity actually talks about the future. Yet, from the different conversations, from the idea, from just this conversation alone, there are, I am going to be terrible at counting. There,
Would you put presenter mode?
Yeah, let's do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So this, this part is talking about the future. However, let's start by fixing some of this because there's a big mistake. It's not the future, it's futures. As we realize right now, within ourselves, we at least have 3 different visions of the future, or a single one, but within this virtual space, there was over 10, 20, 30 futures that took place within the span of 5 minutes. And every future looked, different. So we can say that it's multiple. Please feel free to write down anything that you think of these futures. It can be pluriversal. It could be, well, it could not be. It's not a destination. It's happening, it's changing, it's evolving as we're talking. So all of these are, you know, aspects of futures. Yet, that is not an easy concept to talk about and to talk about in an abstract way. However, the previous set of activities that you've seen are a set of activities that I have created, and I'll talk about a little bit more about their background. But I realized that just talking about the future, just asking the future, then saying future in your language or future in 2050, just changing a little bit of the context, talking with anyone. The concept of plurality, of the future, of these really big abstract notions that, you know, there are theories about and that sometimes confuse us, become so much more reachable and so much more tangible. So, according to Chen and Hoffman, exploring our inner definitions introduce future studies on a more personal, practical level rather than a theoretical one. So, this little activity is actually part of the final set of activities that we created for the teachers. And it was actually not supposed to be like the end product. It was actually, you know, propelled by a research question that I've had, which is how do we talk about future or futures in a futureless space? So again, we're all here, we're talking about the future, but we come from very different backgrounds and very different concepts about the future. And sometimes some things are taken for granted. But in reality, although all futures are equally as important, not all futures are treated equally. And not all conversations are easy to have when it comes to the future, because either priorities are different or either because the concept just doesn't exist or it's contradicting with our daily lives. More questions I had as I was going into this project were, what are the ethical implications and risks about talking about the future, especially in contexts where it could be problematic? So I just said futureless, which seems kind of harsh, but I come from Lebanon, and it's not a unique case. I am sure lots of countries share this. However, currently in the general narrative, whether it's from people inside the country or outside the country, there is this label of futureless. And our youth are leaving at an exponential rate in search of a future. And at the time that I was, you know, exploring this future, I was in the UK. So I was, you know, removed from some of the daily problems and direct conflicts. So I had this mental space to think about the future, to see all of its potential, and to, you know, get excited and you know, want to have it. But then, like, is that okay? Does that make sense? What does that look like? What am I asking of someone to reflect on a future where, you know, sometimes basic needs are not even met? So, motivated by this question, I started to, you know, iterate different kinds of ways to start conversation. Because again, when I started talking, when I came back and I was doing my research back home and I was saying preferable futures and let's talk about it, people were just looking at me like, excuse me? Or we're like, oh, this is really cool, but you know, so it was kind of an interesting conversation. So different approaches were taken, whether it was via informal WhatsApp conversations, whether it was via surveys, you know, whether it was via emojis. So it was really about trying to crack a way to talk about the future without going into hopes and fears and dreams, and just getting us to have a very simple conversation and to look at it differently. So again, some of the ethical implications that come into play when we're doing research is for it to be extractivist. And I really wanted to make sure that when we were doing this research, it wasn't just me getting information or getting answers. And what it turns out is that when we are talking about the future, a lot of people, and again, it was just a question in the beginning to kind of set the stage and have alignment so that, we can establish that, oh, I'm talking about a future, you're talking about a future, but really we're talking about different things and we're seeing different things. So to kind of bring that into the conversation, but it also turned out to be a great tool for reflection. And so people at the end of the workshops would, appreciate that moment of, I had an interesting thought I wasn't having before, or I was able to see that maybe, my personal future is very different from my country, and it's, creating some tension, or there is, I was only thinking of tomorrow. There is a different future in 2050. And so these are the different ways, it being a reflection, it being a space for alignment, and it being a great source of getting information. I will pause here before I move to the next section because I see a hands up. Yes, Michelle.
I have a question. It's come up in other parts of my work, and I have an idea what the answer could be. But when you said the word preferable future, what were the rubs? Was it the rub that everything should be like rosy-eyed and perfect, and a preferable future just pretends that there's no poverty, no oppression? Or yeah, like I'm curious to know what did you find in your research at home?
Yeah. And in reality, I was almost hesitant of the conflict of preferable futures. That particular word was even within myself, because again, I am from there, and I did not want to go in being like, okay, it was that apprehension that started me of just asking future rather than how can we work on a preferable future first, because you go in with your personal bias, and that was one of the things I really wanted to make sure not to do. Again, I had that privilege, that space of being able to think more like not more clear, but like to be able to think and see different angles at that point. But that's not always the case. So the reason I didn't, that's the reason. But when we were studying preferable futures, it was actually about finding the intricacies of it and preferable for who. So it's a different conversation to have. But I didn't even think I could get to that yet until I really understood of like, okay, what is even the perception of future in general here? I have a bias. I just want to see, am I right? Am I wrong? And it turned out to be a very interesting exploration. So still exploring that. Yes, Ada.
I just wanted to add, like, because I did a project in Futures in Spain, and for me, I didn't use these words because whenever I translated them, they sounded so awkward, in my language, or so hard to identify, or like not personal. I don't know how to describe it, but it just didn't sound right. And it just felt like everyone would make a face of like, what are you talking about? So at some point I like stopped using a lot of the words that I learned in futures, like when I was learning about futures and design futures, because it just didn't feel right in that other context. I don't know. Yeah, that was my experience. So it was more about language, I would say, rather than than the concept itself. Oh, Michelle was saying something. Yeah.
Yes, please go ahead.
As with every designer, there's always a renegade and a resistant soul. So when you're talking about the preferable futures in Lebanon, whilst it may sound utopic, insane, and so forth, it is very courageous. It is about resistance and mobilization. But instead of being more of a destructive, mutual assured destruction in a way, it's really about moving to a completely different sphere of reconstruction. Because reconstruction requires a lot more effort, a lot more imagination. So think of somebody who couldn't think think of an architect, right, who is able to create so much versus somebody who doesn't have any building skills at all. So it boils down to a certain set of building skills, I guess, similar to Legos. That's what I guess future studies is providing, and in a way, that's what it is that you are doing. I mean, if I had to summarize it in a snapshot, and what are the dynamics and the underlying current, that's what I'm seeing. And bless you. Thank you for your service.
You. Okay, I have to recover from that and go back and actually go back to a point that Ada made. And remember this face? This face was also present. Wait, let's go for the big reveal again. And no, that's not how you do it. One moment, technical difficulty. Okay. I'm still presenting. Okay. This face was also present last time when we were doing the capacity the workshop with some teachers in collaboration with Kam Kalima, and I said the word mustaqbalat, which means futures in Arabic, which is it just sounds wrong. By the end of the session, people got warmed up to it, but in general, even the way we speak in Arabic, there's usually the or al-tarif, so al-mustaqbal. So it's inherent that it's singular somehow. So even talking about it, and we haven't even gotten into the complex words that futures and foresight actually usually include, and trying to, translate those and trying to hear what those sound like and trying to integrate that into a conversation. So we've moved on to the next part of our section, which is language. And what part does language play within futures? And as we've noticed, the minute we changed the language, our future, our relationship to it, the way we're approaching it completely shifted. And language has the power to do that. It has the power to do so much. And again, I invite you to write down some of the things that you think language can do and the benefits that language have. I'm going to be continuing, but I would love to, again, circle back to that at some point. But I want to talk about two parts in this project when it comes to language. So again, the end product is responding to a gap in the futures world of providing accessible, easy to use tools and resources for teachers and students in order to learn and interact with futures. So automatically, when we have more resources, when, personally, it took me so many hours to try and find something versus I typed the same thing in English and it took about 2 seconds for me to find like 20 resources. Just having resources means that we, within our language, helps us feel a lot more represented, a lot more reflected. It invites a wider audience. Not everyone has the luxury to speak multiple languages, but a lot of people are interested in learning more and having access to that. So automatically having that means there's a wider reach. And it means that there's opportunity for the field to grow and for the person to grow. And that means injecting new perspectives and new ideas into the field. And again, being more represented and reflected, and that circle happens. So that's the first part of the project of why is it important to start having content in Arabic, translated content, even just translated content can make a big, big difference. But also, when I started integrating the idea of language into the work, it started shifting the way I was communicating with futures tools and futures. It was almost like a dance. Every time I would learn something about Arabic or something would come to my attention, I would start reflecting that on English. And so using language as a lens to kind of be critical or to kind of, use it to start questioning things. So, for example, we use the word definition. So we use the word, let's define, you know, the future. Or in academic writing, there's like, okay, the first activity is to define futures in order for participants to be aligned. But we just talked about the fact that future is multiple. So, and when we're at its core, when we're saying define, we're saying to put lines and put it in a box and have it be this very singular thing. But when we look at the word definition in Arabic, which is either meaning or ta'rif, ta'rif, for example, is to get to know something with all senses. So what does that look like if we're, you know, thinking about it? And if then we're trying to, again, translate it back into English rather than saying define, saying, let's get to know futures with all of our senses. Or, you know, when we're saying meaning, let's, you know, explore rather than define. Let's look at the different types. Let's look at the sea of meanings that could potentially be. So words are very powerful. Words can create worlds, and being very mindful of the words that we're using, even if it's within the same language, is something that I learned throughout this process. And it, again, helped break the box a little bit of how we're approaching, how we're writing, you know, how we're writing about the future. It's also helped create different ways of potentially mapping. So again, we say timeline. And so a lot of the times when I was looking at about timelines of Lebanon, it was always done in a, you know, linear manner. But what about, you know, people who view time in a cyclical manner? How can potentially mapping that look like? What it would look different? What would it mean? And lastly, you know, a lot of the times we're using a lot of metaphors that are human-based, but how about we kind of start borrowing from nature, trying to let our imagination find comfort and solace from, you know, words of nature? How would that affect how we are prompting or how we're talking or how we're even designing these activities? I've spoken a lot, but I think we're on time. I think we're on time. There's going to be a break for me. You guys are going to be working really hard because our next activity is going to be combining some of these concepts, combining language, combining, you know, more than the human world. I won't give too many spoilers. I will just let you guys jump in. Any questions or remarks, section?
Could you show us the specific activity we have to complete on Miro? I didn't quite understand the activity.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes, I haven't explained it. And again, there's a reason I try not to explain things beforehand so that not to bias anyone. So again, with the squiggle bird activity, I didn't mention that it's squiggle bird so that your squiggles would be as, you know, as free and as unique and as different as possible. And I need to unlock. And so with this activity, again, you'll just have to trust me a little. And hopefully. Okay. So this is a two-part activity. We're going to start with the simpler part. Oh, I'm going to stop. This is the first part. And again, you're going to be asked to close your eyes and think. And you only have 1 minute. So the first word that comes to your mind. So I'm going to invite you to move the first yellow block into the next section. I can do that right now. And your first prompt is reflecting on who you are right now. It doesn't even have to be this. It can be this moment right now, exactly. What animal represents you? And I invite you to draw that animal. However, it's a very complicated animal, then, you know, you can write it down. But again, we appreciate seeing the different interpretations we have of, you know, the animal that we're drawing. So I'll give you a minute If this wasn't clear, please let me know. I will repeat. And the instructions are also present on the card itself. Okay, last few seconds, wrap up those beautiful animals. And as we're wrapping up, I want you to just put one reason or, why did you choose this animal? If you feel comfortable, if not, you can write it down. We're going to have a little bit of reflection later, but just like one thing, one reason you chose this and you feel like this is something that is representing you at this moment.
Okay.
Okay, and we're going to move on to our next activity. I promise this is the last, imagine and draw activity. If you've gotten bored of it, I promise this is the last one. But in number 1 in blue, I want you to quickly sketch out the image that comes to your mind when I say learning. And you're just going to have a minute for that one. Okay. I urge you to wrap up the learning section and then move on to number 2. There's no more drawing involved. You can just write down. Once everyone's ready for number 2, I want you to just think with me that it's the year 2050. Think of someone, either yourself or someone you really care about in this year, and think about the learning experience for that person in this year. Now, while you're thinking of that, I want you to choose one thing that you wish would still be happening in the year 2050 when it comes to learning. I want you to think of one thing you hope would no longer exist in the process of learning. And I want you to think of one thing you hope that either has started or will start to happen when it comes to the concept of learning. You have about a minute and a half for this one, and then we'll get to some fun stuff. Okay. All right. So now we're going to move to the next section. And I'm going to try to find an empty one so that I can show you an example so that we can walk through it together. So I'm going to be here and I'm going to go into presenter mode. Okay, so what you guys did right now was sort of fill out a prompt that was generated for an imagined city that you were going to visit. So this is usually a group activity, but today for this, I'm going to be doing it as an individual activity. It's the first time I'm doing it this way. So again, feedback, greatly appreciated. And so let's see. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So once upon a not so distant future in the year 2050, you and a few revolutionary individuals decided you have had enough of the old ways of being. You decided to learn from and adapt the wisdom of the animals that are indigenous to your land, mainly and here you put your animal, the one that currently represents you. So if you have a lion, you put your lion here. If you have a turtle, you put your turtle. So I urge everyone to kind of, remove the black box to delete it from their section so that they can reveal this this prompt under them. And, by adopting the wisdom of this animal, life started to look a little bit different. For example, people, when it comes to learning, they stopped, and you put whatever you put, people stop doing when it comes to learning. They also started to, you put whatever you have put in start doing. So maybe, they started doing more outdoor learning, or I'm not really sure. And despite wanting this fresh start and these changes, one thing remained the same. And here, please put what you said you wanted to preserve. Now, amazed by the wonders and wisdom of your city, great tales began to spread across the world. Let us visit the city of dreams and see what a day in the life of one of its inhabitants look like. So I'll give you 2 minutes, start populating your prompt, and then we'll move on to the second section. And please, if anyone's having any problems, technical difficulties, anything's not making sense, flag me down, please. And if there's no need for the 2 minutes, I can jump right into the next activity. Let me know as well.
How long did it take you to create this mural board, Sarah? It's such meticulous details and beautiful design.
Thank you. That comment is worth it, honestly. Thank you.
I just want
Do
to
you guys
say
need
that
more time, or should I?
I think I need more time. Someone was nodding me.
Okay.
No, I just wanted to
No worries.
say
Yeah.
I love the question preserve, because I tend to say, oh no, we need to change everything. But of course, there's also like good things, or like make me think, oh, what is in the present that I actually like, or which things am I taking for granted? So I love that question. It made me think really hard, I have to say, but I love to answer that question.
I look forward to see what you've preserved, actually. I don't see a lot of moving anymore, so should I assume maybe we're ready for the next step? We have a saying that says silence is the sign of agreement, so just gonna go with that one. All right, I'm going to reveal the second activity. Just delete that one. And I'm sorry, I'm going to have you also copy your animal again into this location, just so that it's always visually present. You don't really need to do that, but it's always nice to, always have those to see them. But the next section is, we're about to visit the city, but we need to learn a little bit more about it. So creating a city from scratch is not a small task. And again, you need to get some inspiration. So we're going to root it in some facts and realities, but also in some wisdoms. So what I want you to do is take about 4 minutes to take out your trusty Google, or any other form of could be ChatGPT, any other form of source of knowledge that you have, and I want you to learn a little bit more about your animal. However, I want you to focus on the wisdoms that you can learn from this animal. This is a space where you can populate it with the different ideas and the different, beautiful, impactful, incredible things that this animal does, or even, the most interesting thing that you are fascinated by. And then you'll have a minute to make a decision and put it on your foundation stone. This will be your city pillar, upon which a lot of the traditions and a lot of the decisions and a lot of the way of life will be built upon. So, it's a big decision. So take your time, do some research, and then come back and let's see what your city is going to be, what the pillar of your city is going to look like. And then we'll move on to the next one. So I think I just realized that I miscalculated the time and we're a little bit short on it. So I might make some of the activities a little bit shorter. So I think for anyone who's ready, we can move on to the third one. Also, the instructions are there. So you can also read them, start thinking, get a bit of a head start, just so that we make sure that, you know, we can do some of these. But again, as I mentioned earlier, the point is not to do everything, but just to explore and, you know, see what we can get through in the meantime. But I also want to leave some time for some reflections, which I'm not sure we're going to have some time for. So for those of you who are now in the third part, day in the life of a person in this city, I'm going to give you 2 minutes. I'm going to challenge you to kind of think of a person living. I want you to think, who's this person? Is it you in you know, in the year 2050? Is it someone you're related to? And that's going to be your main character. And I want you to, you know, brainstorm. You don't have to write, just brainstorm some of the things that are happening to you on that day. If a day is too long, you can pick a period of time, like in the morning, in the afternoon, in the midday. But I want you to imagine, what is life looking like when, you know, you're going about your day in a city where you are embracing the pillar of, let's say, let me see, a pillar of adaptability is the key, and stay security. I'm actually interested in seeing what that one looks like. So I'll give 2 minutes, and we're going to go back to this activity and make it richer. But this is just the 2 initial minutes of like visualizing what does that day look like. And if you're not comfortable with writing, you can be taking audio notes, you can be sketching or doodling, whatever you're comfortable with. Okay, for those of you who feel comfortable enough with some of the ideas, don't worry, we're still going to be working on the story. But section 4.1, let's say, is going to be asking you a little bit more detail. So how does this character communicate with others, for example? How are people in the city dressed? When they're going to work, what are the sounds that they're hearing? What are, you know, the smells that they're seeing? You don't have to add all of these details. You can pick 1 or 2 or 3 just to add some more texture into your day. And I'll give you about a minute to maybe adapt and brainstorm, and then I'll throw the last one at you. And again, you don't have to do all of them. They're just extra prompts to get you thinking with more detail into the city, into this life of a person. And I see a few have already moved on to 4.2. It's okay, I'll wait a minute and then I'll talk about that. Okay. And the last one is kind of like how do I say this? It's kind of like playing with your luck. It's a bunch of prompts related to the symbols of a city, and they're hidden. So you can, you know, choose one and you're sort of stuck with it, but not really. You can choose another one. But it's kind of to challenge you a little bit to think about, you know, some of the details of the city and not, you know, the life of this person. So for example, if you look at one of them, it's the national dish. And you have to integrate that within your story. Why the national dish? What are the food components in this dish? How do we cook it? Where is the food coming from? Is it, you know, a big family dish that everyone gets together and cook? Or is it something that's very quick and easily inaccessible? You can choose any other city symbol. Again, I would, you know, play with chance and just pick any random one and see what ideas come to your mind. And again, if you're not at that stage, it's fine. They're just there to, again, help you imagine. And if anyone is way ahead of the curve and has already finished all of these, as usual, there's a section for reflection. You can start putting your reflections there as well. So whoever is feeling, okay, I'm ready, you can go there. Whoever wants to explore more, go for it. And whoever is feeling very brave and in love with their story or intrigued and wants to share, I would love to hear. Okay, I think we have 3 minutes left. I would love to hear, I would love to just close on some reflections. Love to hear your thoughts on these activities. And, you know, if anyone wants to continue the conversation, please, you have my contact. There's LinkedIn. Please let me know if anything else you want to talk about. And yeah, please, Semina. I hope I said the
Thank
name
you,
correctly.
Sarah. Yes, you did. Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to take a moment to thank you so much for this workshop. It was really well organized. I don't know what you were nervous about. You did so well. Such good insight. It was so interesting to see how the idea of futures changed when folks were thinking in their different languages. This story activity was amazing. So yeah, I just wanted to take a moment to congratulate you. This was really great. Thank you for creating this. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I also second and congratulate and very grateful for all of the effort you've put in. And sorry, because it's a little bit late at night, I haven't been able to focus very well, but certainly looking forward to another workshop. Very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Michelle.
I really appreciated this workshop. Your design is gorgeous, and I echo. I hope you don't get worried the next time you do it. I think the thing that I found most intriguing about this exercise was when you kept trying to put us back into humanity of being in a city, being in a country. I found myself not there. I found myself much more somehow being in whatever I thought nature was. And I live in a city, so I'm quite surprised.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. I think, thank you so much. I'm just gonna give you a brief, explanation behind these. The reason behind these activities is to find ways to think of futures differently, away from tech and AI, to go back and integrate some of the details, our culture. A lot of these, again, are inspired by, our daily lives. And, that is really the purpose. It's the purpose of how do we allow ourselves a moment to think outside of the systems that we keep propagating somehow that we think are unbreakable. How can we look at it differently? And then what can we learn from it? That's really the purpose of it. So what you were just saying was quite cool. And I think, Thais, if I'm not wrong, that brings us to the end of this session. I think it's
Yeah.
1 now. Yeah, and I think there's an amazing session after this as well. So
Yes, thank you so much, Sarah. It was super creative, super beautiful session. I love it. I feel it could be like 3 hours for us to really, dive deep into every part of it. Amazing job. Thank you so much. And thanks for the participation of everyone. It was super interactive. So our next session is starting in 30 minutes, and the name of the session is How Do We Dream Under the Same Sky? I think you don't want to miss it. So if it's not too late for you, or maybe you can still stay, that would be great. We're going to close the room now, and then reopen it in a little bit before 30 minutes from now. And you're going to receive an email from Luma, and please give us feedback so that we can pass it on to Sarah as well. And also for Abril and myself to keep improving Women Who Futures for the next editions. Thank you so much, everyone. And the recordings will be available from next week onwards on our LinkedIn page. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.